How did all this? I've had such a wonderful life.
People think they understand what grief looks like in Hollywood. It's clean, it's polished, it's carefully staged, black outfits, calm voices, statements filtered through publicists and lawyers, sadness that feels distant, almost rehearsed. That's the version we're used to. But what's happening right now doesn't fit that script at all. Because this time, the truth didn't come from a press conference. It didn't come from a spokesperson. And it definitely didn't come from someone trying to protect a reputation. It came from Shirley MacLaine. At 91 years old, she has outlived the need to stay silent. She's survived every era of Hollywood. The glamour, the lies, the deals made behind closed doors, and the damage those deals leave behind. And when she finally spoke about what really happened inside Rob Reiner's home, she didn't soften a single word. This wasn't emotional in the way people expect. There were no gentle memories, no carefully chosen phrases. There was anger, there was exhaustion, and there was a truth that made powerful people immediately uncomfortable. Because Shirley wasn't just talking about loss, she was talking about warning signs, about denial, about something she believes was unfolding long before the world ever knew to look. And according to her, what happened wasn't sudden. It wasn't random. It wasn't inevitable. It was a slow collapse, one that everyone close to the situation could feel, but no one wanted to confront. And once Shirley started talking, there was no putting the mask back on. What made Shirley MacLaine's words so unsettling wasn't just what she revealed, it was how she revealed it. She didn't cry on camera. She didn't lower her voice. She didn't speak in the soft, nostalgic tone people expect from someone her age. Instead, she sounded tired. Tired of pretending certain endings are unavoidable. Tired of watching the same mistakes repeat behind closed doors. And tired of the way Hollywood explains tragedy only after it's too late. According to Shirley, the public has been told a simplified version of events, a version that makes everything feel sudden and unpreventable. But she made it clear that narrative doesn't match what she saw. This wasn't a single bad night. This wasn't a random collapse. She believes something had been building for a long time, and the most painful part? Rob Reiner wasn't blind to it. Shirley described him as someone who felt the danger approaching, but didn't know how to face what it meant. Not because he lacked intelligence or awareness, but because admitting the truth would have required a kind of acceptance no parent ever wants to reach. That's what gives her words weight. She wasn't attacking Rob, she wasn't questioning his love. If anything, she described him as deeply devoted, almost to a fault. In Shirley's eyes, Rob believed that patience, love, and protection could calm any storm, that if he stayed present long enough, if he kept smoothing things over, the situation would eventually correct itself. But she warned him, and that warning is what makes this story so hard to hear now. Because when Shirley talks about Rob, she doesn't describe a careless man or an absent father. She describes someone trapped between fear and hope, someone who saw cracks forming but kept choosing optimism over confrontation. And in Hollywood, that choice has consequences. Consequences people rarely talk about until everything falls apart. Shirley said there was a moment she couldn't shake, a moment that stayed with her long after she left the house. About 3 weeks before everything ended, she noticed Rob Reiner wasn't the man she had known for decades. The voice that once filled rooms was quieter. The confidence that once anchored conversations felt drained. Even his posture seemed different. She used one word to describe him: shrinking. Not physically, emotionally. She described sitting with Rob and Michelle in their home and feeling a weight in the air that made small talk feel impossible. Conversations didn't flow. Laughter didn't come easily. Instead of leading the room like he always had, Rob barely spoke. And when he did, his attention kept drifting to the same place: the window, more specifically, the driveway outside. Shirley said it felt as if Rob wasn't just listening to the conversation, he was waiting, watching, anticipating something he didn't want to arrive but knew might. According to her, this wasn't paranoia, it was fear. Fear rooted in familiarity. Fear that comes from recognizing patterns you've seen before but hoped would never return. She noticed that every sound outside made him tense. A car slowing down, a door closing nearby. Moments that would mean nothing to most people seemed to pull his focus completely away. And that's when Shirley realized something was deeply wrong. This wasn't a stress from work. This wasn't exhaustion from age. This was a man who no longer felt safe in his own home. That detail alone reframes everything, because it suggests this wasn't a sudden eruption of chaos. It was the final stage of something that had already been spiraling for a long time. And Shirley believes the family knew it. They just didn't know how to stop it. This is where the story stops being just tragic and it starts becoming deeply uncomfortable. According to Shirley, the family wasn't blindsided. She believes they were aware that something was unraveling long before outsiders ever noticed. And this wasn't a brief rough patch or a temporary emotional dip. She described it as a slow mental unraveling mixed with anger, entitlement, and a growing sense of instability that couldn't be brushed off anymore. What makes this part so painful is the role love played in it. Shirley didn't accuse Rob of neglect. She didn't paint him as distant or careless, quite the opposite. She described a father who believed, with everything in him, that patience and protection could calm the storm, that if he stayed close enough, generous enough, forgiving enough, the situation would eventually destabilize. Money, time, access, all given with the intention of keeping things from exploding. But Shirley told him directly, trying to smooth over something this serious doesn't make it disappear. It only delays the impact. And now, looking back, she believes Rob knew that on some level. He just couldn't accept what acting on that knowledge would mean, because acting would have required boundaries strong enough to hurt. And for parents like Rob and Michelle, that was the impossible line, not because they didn't see the danger, but because crossing that line felt like betraying their own child. That's the part Shirley keeps coming back to. Not cruelty, not ignorance, but misplaced hope. Hope that love alone could fix something that was already far beyond love's reach. And according to her, that hope came at a devastating cost. Shirley made one thing very clear. This wasn't about a lack of love. If anything, there was too much of it, given in the wrong way for too long. According to her, the situation inside the house had already crossed the line from family struggle into something far more dangerous. What started as concern slowly turned into accommodation. What began as support quietly became permission. Not permission spoken out loud, but permission implied through silence. Shirley described a dynamic where tension was constantly managed, not resolved. Arguments were cooled down instead of confronted. Warning signs were acknowledged privately but rarely addressed directly. And that's where the blind spot formed. Because every time the situation escalated, the response wasn't to draw a harder boundary, it was to absorb the impact and hope it would pass. Rob believed that protecting his child from consequences was the same as protecting his child from harm. Shirley didn't agree. She told him that love doesn't work like that when instability goes unchecked, that shielding someone from reality doesn't calm the storm. It teaches the storm that there are no limits. And the most haunting part, she believes the danger wasn't hidden. It was visible, it was escalating, and it was exhausting everyone in the house. She described Rob as someone constantly calculating what to say, what not to say, how far to push, when to step back. Living in that state doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It looks quiet, but inside, it erodes everything. According to Shirley, by the time she last visited, the house didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a place where everyone was walking carefully, choosing words cautiously, and bracing for the next emotional swing. And when a home reaches that point, she believes, it's already in crisis. The tragedy wasn't that no one cared. The tragedy was that caring became a substitute for action. According to Shirley, there was one detail she couldn't ignore. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation. It wasn't even something anyone said out loud. It was the atmosphere. She explained that when a home starts to feel tense all the time, something fundamental has already broken. Not because people are yelling, but because they've stopped being honest. Every conversation becomes careful. Every sentence feels measured. Every silence carries weight. Shirley felt that the moment she walked into the house, no one was relaxed, no one spoke freely. It felt like everyone was bracing for the next emotional shift. And in her experience, that kind of tension doesn't appear overnight. It grows when fear becomes routine. Rob didn't talk openly about it. Michelle tried to keep the peace. And that, Shirley believed, was the most dangerous dynamic of all. Because when one person constantly steps in to calm situations down, to soften edges, to prevent explosions, that person often absorbs the pressure meant for everyone else, not out of weakness, out of love. Shirley described Michelle as the emotional buffer of the household, the one who stood between conflict before it could spiral, the mediator, the stabilizer. But that role comes at a cost. In Shirley's eyes, Michelle wasn't reckless that night. She wasn't careless. She was doing what she had always done, trying to protect everyone at once. And that instinct, Shirley believes, may have placed her directly in harm's path. Not because she ignored danger, but because she loved deeply in a situation that had already gone beyond what love alone could contain. That's when Shirley realized this wasn't just a family crisis anymore. It was a situation that had quietly crossed into real danger.